Now let's talk about simplifying ratios with decimals. So what happens a lot of times is you're creating a similarity ratio or a scale factor, and your ratio has a decimal in it. Now we can't leave it like that. So the way we simplify it is like this. If you have a ratio or a fraction with a decimal in it, you're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same factor of 10. Then you can simplify. So let's look at our first example. We have a ratio or a fraction with a decimal in the numerator. To simplify this, because this ratio or fraction can be simplified, we need to get rid of that decimal. So how do we do that? Well, we need to move this decimal point to the right one place. If we move it to the right one place, this will turn into 72, and then we can simplify this. So what do you have to do to a number to move the decimal to the right one place? You multiply it by 10. If I multiply 7.2 by 10, this becomes 72. But whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do the exact same thing to the denominator because I'm multiplying by a form of 1. 10 over 10 is a form of 1. And when you multiply a number by 1 or a form of 1, it doesn't actually change the number, but it allows us to simplify it a little bit further. So again, whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. If I'm multiplying the numerator by 10, I have to multiply the denominator by 10. 7.2 times 10 is going to be 72. 9 times 10 is going to be 90. Now I can simplify this. 72 over 90, I think each of these are divisible by 9. So when I do that, I end up getting 8 over 10. And now I can simplify this a little bit further. 8 and 10 are both divisible by 2, so I can divide each of those by 2, and I end up getting 4 over 5. So 7.2 over 9 actually simplifies down to 4 over 5. For part B, I have another ratio or fraction with decimals in it. So I need to get rid of those decimals. In my numerator, to get rid of the decimal, I would have to move it to the right one place, meaning I would have to multiply the numerator by 10. In my denominator, to get rid of my decimal, I would have to move it to the right 2 places, meaning I would have to multiply that by 100. But I can't multiply the numerator and denominator by different things. So whatever the biggest factor of 10 is that you're going to have to multiply by the numerator or denominator, that's what you have to multiply to both. So because the denominator requires that I multiply by 100 to move the decimal place to the right 2 places, I have to multiply the numerator and denominator by 100. Because in my numerator, it still guarantees that I'm going to get rid of this decimal. I'm just moving it to the right 2 places instead of 1. So this will become 140. In my denominator, when I multiply that by 100, this decimal moves to the right 2 places. I get 4. Now each of these are divisible by 4. When I simplify this, and I end up getting 35 over 1, which just simplifies to 35. It's kind of crazy that 1.4 over 0.04, if you were to simplify that, becomes 35. Part C, doing the same thing, they just write your ratio a little bit differently. So in order to simplify this, I got to get rid of my decimals. Meaning on the right side, I would have to move my decimal point to the right 1, 2, 3 places, which means I would have to multiply that by 1,000. Over here, I just need to move my decimal point to the right 1, 2 places to get rid of it. So I would have to multiply by 100. But remember, just like up here, we had to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same factor of 10. Down here, we have to multiply each side of our ratio by the same factor of 10. So since this side is being multiplied by 1,000, and that's bigger than 100, I have to multiply both sides of this ratio by 1,000. Now on this side, the decimal point gets to move over 3 places, which is why we did it. This becomes 8. Over here, we still get rid of our decimal, but we're just moving it over 1 extra place, so it becomes 40. Now I can simplify. Both of these sides of our ratio are divisible by 8, so when I do that, I get 1 to 5. So this ratio up here simplifies to 1 to 5. Part D, doing the same thing except we have an extended ratio. So for each part of our extended ratio, we have to get rid of our decimal. On the left side, we would have to move our decimal point over 2 places to get rid of it, meaning we would have to multiply it by 100. In the middle part of our extended ratio, we have to move our decimal point over to the right 1 place to get rid of it, meaning we would have to multiply it by 10. And then the right side, same thing. To move our decimal point over to the right 1 place, we would have to multiply it by 10. Again, we have to multiply each part of our ratio by the same factor of 10 because it's got to be a form of 1. So, which is the biggest factor of 10 that it would require to get rid of the decimals here? Well, on the left side, we are multiplying by 100 to get rid of our decimals. So, we have to multiply each part of this extended ratio by 100. When that happens, on the left side, we multiply this by 100, so the decimal point moves over 2 places. That's why we did it. We get 106. In the middle part of our extended ratio, we move our decimal point over 2 places. We get 140. And on the right side of our extended ratio, same thing. We move it over to the right 2 places, even though it only needed 1, because we had to multiply each part by 100. So we end up getting 106 to 140 to 220. We can then simplify this. Each part of the extended ratio here would be divisible by 2. So when we divide each of those parts by 2, we end up getting 53 to 70 to 110. That is the simplified form of this extended ratio up here.